The Chicago skyline glittered like a crown at dusk, its steel spires piercing the violet sky above the loop. Hearth and Haven, perched on the 40th floor of a sleek glass tower, commanded a view of Lake Michigan's waves, their ripples catching the last rays of sunlight. A 25-foot glass wall framed the restaurant's dining room, reflecting the city's pulse. Taxis honking on Michigan Avenue, the distant hum of a Millennium Park jazz concert drifting through the open terrace doors. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of seared meat and ambition. A 15-foot chandelier dripped crystal, casting golden halos over tables draped in white linen, where Chicago's elite sipped $200 bottles of Napa Valley Cabernet. The menu boasted gourmet American classics, maple-glazed pork belly, crab cakes with bourbon aioli, and a 12-ounce prime rib that could make a South Side butcher weep. This was fine dining, Chicago style, bold, proud, and unapologetic, a testament to the city's culinary heart. Keanu Reeves stepped through the revolving doors, his scuffed boots thudding softly against the polished oak floor. His faded denim jacket hung loose over a black t-shirt, the cuffs frayed from years of wear. No Rolex, no tailored suit, just a quiet presence that seemed to absorb the room's glow rather than reflect it. In his left hand, he clutched a worn silver locket, its surface engraved with two words, "For all." It was a gift from Clara Monroe, his late mentor, a fiery Chicago restaurateur who'd co-founded Hearth and Haven 2 decades ago, with a radical dream: fine dining for everyone, not just the wealthy. Clara had believed a good meal could bridge divides, that a table was a place for dignity, not judgment. Now, rumors swirled that the restaurant had betrayed her vision, favoring glitz over grace. Keanu, who'd funded the venture but stayed in the shadows, had come to see for himself, unannounced, to test the truth. The dining room buzzed with curated elegance. Couples in silk dresses and bespoke suits clinked glasses at the champagne bar, their laughter mingling with the soft clatter of forks on porcelain. A server weaving between tables muttered about the Cubs' 9th-inning rally against the Sox, his voice a low hum of local pride. But as Keanu approached the host podium, the air shifted. Lucas Bennett, the maitre d', barely looked up from his leather-bound reservation book. Young, sharp-eyed, and dressed in a vest so crisp it could cut glass, Lucas was ambition incarnate, a 25-year-old desperate to climb the ladder. Under the thumb of Vanessa Cole, the restaurant's icy manager, he'd learned to spot undesirables at a glance. Anyone who didn't scream wealth was a threat to Hearth and Haven's polished image. Lucas's eyes flicked over Keanu's outfit, narrowing at the scuffed boots and lack of a tie. His lips curled into a practiced smirk, the kind that said, "You don't belong without a word." "Can I help you?" he asked, smoothing his vest with exaggerated calm, his tone dripping with condescension. Keanu's voice was low, polite, almost gentle. "Yeah, I was hoping to grab dinner. Heard your chef does a mean prime rib." Lucas tilted his head, as if Keanu had misspoken. "We're reservation only, sir," he said, the "sir" sharp as a knife. "Our wait list is 8 weeks." Keanu smiled faintly, unfazed, his fingers brushing the locket in his palm. "That's all right. I don't mind waiting." Lucas leaned over the podium, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "We have standards." He didn't say, "Look at yourself," but the message hung heavy in the air, thicker than the scent of truffle oil wafting from a nearby table. Keanu's expression didn't waver, his dark eyes steady and unreadable as they scanned the room. The velvet chairs, the sommelier pouring a $300 Pinot Noir, the diners pretending not to stare. He turned back to Lucas, voice calm but firm. "I understand, but I'm not here to impress anyone, just hungry." Lucas's smirk widened, professional yet poisonous. "Very well," he said, gesturing with a flourish. "We have a table near the kitchen. Keanu nodded once. Perfect. As Lucas led him through the maze of white tablecloths, heads turned. A woman in a sapphire gown whispered to her date, "Is that?" Her companion, a man in a 3-pound cashmere blazer, snorted. "Nah, just some guy who wandered in from Wrigleyville." The table Lucas offered was a deliberate insult, a wobbly two-top wedged beside the kitchen's 8-foot swinging doors, where clattering pans and gusts of steam drowned out the jazz. The overhead light flickered, casting a harsh glare on a tarnished silver napkin ring, a detail Lucas would never tolerate for a worthy guest. "This seat," Lucas said, dropping the menu with a thud, "offers an intimate experience with our culinary process." The menu slid half an inch too far, teetering on the edge. Keanu caught it with one hand, his reflexes sharp enough to make a nearby server pause. He looked up at Lucas, a glint of humor in his eyes. "Guess my jacket missed the dress code memo," he said, voice dry. Lucas's fake smile didn't falter. "No trouble at all," he replied, then added, "Let us know if you'd like the children's menu." A soft chuckle rippled from a nearby booth, where 2 diners watched with smug amusement. Keanu flipped open the menu, unbothered, scanning it as if the room's judgment didn't exist. But beneath his calm, the locket in his pocket felt heavier. Clara's voice echoed in his mind. "A table is for everyone, Keanu. Don't let them forget." He'd come to test Hearth and Haven's soul, and Lucas had just drawn the first line in the sand. Vanessa Cole watched from the shadows near the bar, her sharp heels silent on the oak floor. She'd built Hearth and Haven into a fortress of exclusivity, and Lucas was her gatekeeper. Keanu's presence was a crack in that facade, one she'd ensure didn't spread. As Lucas returned to his podium, whispering to a server about yesterday's wine for the drifter, Keanu sat still, the locket's weight a quiet promise. The room might see a nobody, but Clara had taught him better. Dignity wasn't on the menu. It was the meal itself, and he'd make sure Hearth and Haven remembered. The dining room of Hearth and Haven buzzed with the clink of crystal and the low hum of Chicago's elite, their voices weaving through the 2,000-square-foot space like a carefully curated symphony. The 15-foot chandelier above cast a warm glow, illuminating tables laden with $200 plates of maple-glazed pork belly and 12-ounce prime ribs, each dish a nod to the city's culinary swagger. A server darted past, muttering about the Cubs' comeback on the radio, while the faint strains of jazz from Millennium Park lingered beyond the 25-foot glass wall. Keanu Reeves sat at his wobbly table, a 3-foot insult tucked beside the kitchen's 8-foot swinging doors, where clattering pans and bursts of steam punctuated the air. His faded denim jacket, still damp from the city's evening chill, hung loosely over his frame, the silver locket from Clara tucked in his pocket, a quiet reminder of why he was here. Lucas Bennett, the maitre d', hovered near the champagne bar, his sharp eyes tracking Keanu like a hawk sizing up prey. Vanessa Cole, the restaurant's steely manager, had drilled her directive into him, "Keep out the riffraff." To Lucas, Keanu was the embodiment of that riffraff, a man in scuffed boots who dared to order a $250 crab-stuffed lobster in a room built for Prada and power. Vanessa's shadow loomed large. Her vision of Hearth and Haven as a fortress of exclusivity fueled Lucas's ambition. He'd spent months proving his loyalty, turning away anyone who didn't fit her polished image, and Keanu's presence was a test he couldn't afford to fail. As he approached Keanu's table, menu in hand, his smirk was a blade wrapped in silk. "Ready to order?" he asked, pen poised like a weapon, his tone implying Keanu's choice was already a mistake. Keanu glanced up from the menu, his dark eyes calm but piercing. "I'll take the crab-stuffed lobster, medium rare, and a glass of the '98 Napa Valley Cabernet," he said, voice steady. Lucas blinked, his hand freezing mid-note. You do realize that's a $250 entree and a $150 glass of wine? Keanu nodded, unfazed. I do. Lucas hesitated, his irritation flickering like the faulty light above Keanu's table. He scribbled the order with a touch too much force, the pen nearly tearing the paper. Very well, he muttered. It's your tab. As he turned, he caught the eye of a couple at a central table, a man in a Prada suit and a woman in a shimmering gown, who raised their eyebrows in amusement. Lucas shook his head, smirking. Some people love wasting our time, he whispered, loud enough for them to hear. Back at his podium, Lucas leaned toward a junior sommelier, his voice low. Pour him the dregs from yesterday's bottle. He won't know the difference. The sommelier nodded, suppressing a grin, and headed to the cellar. Meanwhile, Keanu sat still, his fingers brushing the locket in his pocket. The room's judgment, the sidelong glances, the muffled chuckles, rolled off him like water. He could feel Clara's words in his bones. A table is for everyone, but as he scanned the dining room, he saw her dream warped, twisted into a shrine for wealth. The velvet chairs, the 10-foot floral centerpiece, the $300 bottles of wine. It was all a betrayal of what Hearth and Haven was meant to be. The lobster arrived with theatrical flair, a silver cloche gleaming under the chandelier's light. A nervous junior waiter set it before Keanu with care, the dish's golden crust and bourbon aioli aroma briefly silencing the kitchen's clatter. Keanu nodded. Thank you. The waiter turned, only to be intercepted by Lucas, who snatched the $150 Cabernet from his tray with a smirk. I'll handle this, he said, strutting toward Keanu's table, bottle cradled like a trophy. The dining room's chatter softened, eyes following him, some eager, some amused, others sensing a storm brewing. Lucas uncorked the wine with a practiced flourish, holding it aloft. Your Cabernet, sir, he said, mockingly formal. Aged to perfection, like the clientele we usually serve. Keanu tilted his head, a faint smile playing on his lips, but said nothing. Lucas poured too quickly, the wine splashing near the rim, a crimson bead teetering on the edge. He set the bottle down harder than necessary, and as he turned, his hip, accidentally, bumped the table's edge. It shifted an inch, just enough. The lobster plate wobbled, the wine glass tipped, and with a theatrical gasp, "Oops!" Lucas's elbow nudged the table again, deliberate as a stage cue. The $250 dish crashed into Keanu's lap, golden sauce splattering his black jeans, crab and garnishes clinging to the denim. The wine followed, soaking his shirt like ink, a 4-ounce stain spreading across his chest. A sharp inhale swept the dining room, like a breeze through glass. The Prada-suited man chuckled, whispering to his date, "Guess he's not cut out for the loop." Laughter bubbled from nearby tables, nervous and cruel. Keanu looked down, his jaw clenching once, barely noticeable, then reached for his napkin with slow, deliberate movements. His hand, quick as a flash, caught the glass before it shattered on the floor. The motion, so fluid, it drew gasps from a nearby server. "Good thing I'm not allergic to lobster," he quipped, voice dry but warm, wiping his lap as if the room's mockery didn't exist. The couple in Prada paused, their smirks faltering at his composure. Lucas didn't bother hiding his triumph. "Oh no," he said, voice dripping with fake regret. "Even gourmet food knows a misplaced guest." He turned, victorious, but missed the flicker in Keanu's eyes. Not anger, but focus, like a switch had flipped. As Keanu folded the napkin, he overheard Vanessa at the bar, her voice sharp. "Once we franchise, every Hearth and Haven will keep out types like him. It's brand protection." Keanu's fingers tightened on the locket. This wasn't just about a spilled plate. It was about a system poisoning Clara's dream, spreading across the U.S. like a virus. The stakes were higher now, and he wasn't here to play their game. He was here to rewrite it. The dining room of Hearth and Haven shimmered under the 15-foot chandelier, its golden light bouncing off the 25-foot glass wall that framed Lake Michigan's dark expanse. The 2,000-square-foot space hummed with the clatter of silverware and the murmur of Chicago's elite, savoring $200 plates of maple-glazed pork belly and crab cakes with bourbon aioli. Keanu Reeves sat at his wobbly table by the kitchen's 8-foot swinging doors, the stain of spilled lobster and a $150 Cabernet still darkening his jeans. His fingers brushed the silver locket in his pocket. Clara's words, "A table is for everyone," burning brighter than the room's judgment. The laughter from the Prada-suited couple had faded, replaced by curious glances after Keanu's quick reflexes saved a glass from shattering. But the real test was coming, and Keanu was ready to turn the tables. Keanu caught the eye of a server, his voice low but firm. "Please tell Lucas I'd like to invite some friends to the central table." The server hesitated, glancing at the VIP table, 10 feet wide, draped in crisp linen, reserved for moguls and celebrities. Lucas Bennett, the maitre d', appeared moments later, his vest pristine but his smirk faltering. "Friends?" he asked, skepticism sharp as a knife. Keanu nodded, his calm unshaken. "5 of them, and I expect you to treat them with the respect this place was built on." Lucas's eyes narrowed, but he nodded, sensing Vanessa Cole's gaze from the bar. Vanessa, her blazer whiter than the tablecloths, had built Hearth and Haven into a fortress of exclusivity, and Lucas knew failure wasn't an option. 10 minutes later, the glass doors chimed softly, drowned by the dining room's buzz. 5 guests stepped inside, their presence a stark contrast to the sequined gowns and tailored suits. Mike, a retired Chicago firefighter, wore a faded flannel shirt, his 200-pound frame carrying the weight of decades saving lives. Lila, a single mom and diner cook, sported a thrift store blazer, her hair in a practical bun. Jaden, a 20-year-old food blogger and college student, rocked a hoodie with a DePaul University patch. Rosa, a veteran with close-cropped hair, stood tall in worn khakis, her dog tags glinting under the chandelier. Amir, a high school teacher, leaned on a cane, his weathered face etched with years of inspiring kids in Englewood. They didn't fit Hearth and Haven's mold, and the room noticed. Whispers rippled. Forks paused mid-bite. Lucas approached, clipboard trembling slightly. "Good evening," he said, voice tight, leading them to the central table. The diners gaped as the group sat, their confidence clashing with the room's pretension. Lila smiled at Lucas, her tone warm but pointed. "What's the difference between your truffle mac and cheese and the lobster version?" Lucas hesitated, his instinct to sneer battling Vanessa's orders. "If you have to ask," he muttered, "you probably can't afford either." Silence fell, sharp as broken glass. Mike chuckled, his voice deep and unfazed. "I've put out fires tougher than your attitude, kid." The nearby Prada couple shifted uncomfortably, their amusement fading as Jaden pulled out his phone, snapping a photo of the 10-foot floral centerpiece, muttering, "This'll get some likes." Keanu watched from his table, sipping water, his gaze steady on Lucas. The challenge was clear: serve these guests with dignity or face consequences. But Keanu's plan was bigger than one maitre d'. While the dining room simmered with tension, he slipped through a staff corridor, past a 5-foot wine rack, stacked with $300 bottles, to Vanessa's office. The lock clicked open with a code only founders knew. Clara had insisted on anonymity, but Keanu hadn't forgotten. The office was sleek, smelling of lemon polish and ambition, with a glass desk and a touchscreen monitor glowing softly. Keanu sat, his reflection calm but resolved, and tapped into the administrative dashboard. The screen revealed a betrayal deeper than Lucas's smirk. A 40-page franchise proposal, stamped Elite Ventures, outlined Vanessa's plan to replicate Hearth and Haven's elitist model in 20 U.S. cities, from Miami to Seattle. Financial records showed $50,000 in staff training funds, diverted to this shell company, leaving servers overworked and undertrained. A hidden memo, buried in a locked folder, was the final blow. Vanessa's policy to seat undesirable guests, those in substandard attire, near the kitchen or turn them away to protect the brand. Keanu's brow furrowed, his fingers tightening on Clara's locket. This wasn't just about one rude night. It was a system designed to exclude, to erase the dream Clara died for. Back in the dining room, Lucas struggled to maintain his facade. Rosa asked about vegan options, her voice steady but firm. "This isn't a food truck," Lucas snapped, his patience fraying. Amir raised an eyebrow, leaning on his cane. "Funny. I teach kids to respect everyone, no matter where they eat." The room's whispers grew louder, diners now watching the guests with curiosity, not scorn. Jaden typed furiously on The air in Hearth and Haven's 2,000-square-foot dining room crackled with tension. The 15-foot chandeliers glow, casting jagged shadows across the white linen tables. Lake Michigan's waves shimmered beyond the 25-foot glass wall, a silent witness to the storm brewing inside. Keanu Reeves stood by his wobbly table near the kitchen's 8-foot swinging doors, the stain of $250 lobster and $150 Cabernet still clinging to his jeans. In his hand, a thin folder held Vanessa Cole's secrets, a 40-page franchise proposal, $50,000 in diverted funds, and a memo mandating discrimination. At the central table, Mike, Lila, Jaden, Rosa, and Amir sat tall, their presence defying the room's earlier scorn. The diners, once smug, now watched with bated breath, sensing a shift in the 10-foot-wide VIP table's gravity. Lucas Bennett, the maitre d', hovered nearby, his clipboard trembling, caught between Vanessa's orders and Keanu's challenge to serve with respect. Vanessa Cole swept into the dining room, her heels clicking like gunfire on the oak floor. Her blazer, whiter than the 3-pound snow crab on the menu, gleamed under the chandelier. She stopped short of Keanu's table, her eyes narrowing to slits. "You," she hissed, voice low but venomous, "are a nobody causing a scene in my restaurant. Leave, or I'll have security drag you out." The Prada-suited couple, at a nearby table, leaned forward, their $300 Pinot Noir forgotten. A server paused mid-step, the clatter of the kitchen's pans fading into a hush. Keanu met Vanessa's gaze, his calm unshaken, and reached into his pocket. He pulled out the silver locket engraved with "For All," its surface catching the light. With a soft click, it opened, revealing a small key, etched with Hearth and Haven's founding charter seal. Keanu held the key aloft, his voice steady but resonant, cutting through the 2,000-square-foot silence. "I'm not a nobody, Vanessa. I'm a founder of Hearth and Haven with Clara Monroe, who built this place for everyone, not just your elite." Gasps rippled through the room, forks clinking against plates. The Prada couple's jaws dropped, their earlier chuckles replaced by wide-eyed shock. Keanu turned to the diners, folder in hand, his presence commanding the space. This restaurant was meant to unite, but Vanessa's turned it into a fortress. She plans to franchise this discrimination nationwide. 20 cities, $50,000 in stolen training funds, funneled to her shell company, Elite Ventures. He held up the memo, its words stark, undesirable guests to be seated near the kitchen to protect the brand. The room erupted in murmurs, diners shifting in their velvet chairs. Jaden, the food blogger, typed furiously on his phone, live tweeting, "Keanu Reeves just exposed Hearth and Haven's shady franchise plan. Hearth for all." The hashtag ticked up, likes pouring in from Chicago and beyond. Lila, the single mom and diner cook, stood at the central table, her thrift store blazer proud. "I was turned away from places like this as a teen mom," she said, voice cracking but strong. "Thought I didn't belong because I couldn't afford a $200 dress. This isn't right." Mike, the firefighter, nodded, his 200-pound frame leaning forward. "I've saved lives in worse heat than this room's judgment. Everyone deserves a seat," Rosa, the veteran, added. "I fought for this country. Not for some fancy table, but for respect." Amir, the teacher, gripped his cane. "I teach kids in Englewood to value everyone. This place forgot that." The diners listened, some nodding, others clutching their $300 wine glasses in shame. Vanessa's face drained of color, her 3-pound designer purse slipping slightly in her grip. "This is absurd," she spat, turning to Lucas. "Escort him out now." Lucas froze, his eyes darting between Vanessa and the guests. Keanu's words echoed in his mind. Not just the founder reveal, but the challenge to serve with dignity. He saw Lila's quiet strength, Mike's steady gaze, Jaden's fearless tweets. Vanessa's true nature, her greed, her cruelty, clicked into focus. Lucas stepped forward, not toward Keanu, but to the central table. "I'm sorry," he said, voice low but clear, addressing the guests. "I was wrong. You belong here, and I'll make it right." The room exhaled, a soft applause starting at a nearby table, led by a Chicago Tribune critic in a tweed jacket, her phone capturing the moment. Vanessa lunged forward, her voice a snarl. "You're fired, Lucas." But Keanu raised a hand, silencing her. "No, Vanessa, you're done." He nodded to a security guard by the bar, who approached, holding a 2-pound clipboard with Vanessa's badge, already confiscated. "Your franchise plan ends tonight," Keanu said, holding up the folder. "And so does your time here." The guard escorted Vanessa out, her heels dragging across the oak floor, her purse clutched like a lifeline. The glass doors chimed as she vanished into the Chicago night, the city's skyline indifferent to her fall. The applause grew, diners standing, their earlier judgment replaced by awe. The critic tweeted, "Hearth and Haven's reckoning is live. Keanu Reeves and these guests are rewriting fine dining." Hearth for all. Jaden's phone buzzed with notifications, the hashtag trending nationwide. Lucas, still at the central table, offered Mike a fresh napkin, his hand steady now. "Anything else you need, sir?" he asked, genuine. Mike grinned. "Just keep that attitude, kid." Keanu returned to his table, the lobster stain a badge of his fight. The locket felt lighter in his pocket. Clara's dream alive in the guests' voices, the diner's claps, the viral pulse of Hearth for all. The room, once a fortress, was cracking open, and Keanu wasn't done rebuilding. The dining room of Hearth and Haven, still aglow under its 15-foot chandelier, pulsed with a new energy. The 2,000-square-foot space, once a fortress of exclusivity, now hummed with applause, the sound rising like a Lake Michigan breeze beyond the 25-foot glass wall. Keanu Reeves stood by the central table, where Mike, Lila, Jaden, Rosa, and Amir sat, their stories of exclusion having cracked the room's judgment wide open. The folder in Keanu's hand, proof of Vanessa Cole's $50,000 theft and discriminatory franchise plan, lay on the table, a silent testament to the fight just won. Lucas Bennett, the maitre d', stood nearby, his clipboard forgotten, his earlier smirk replaced by a humbled gaze. The Chicago Tribune critic's tweet, "Hearth and Haven's reckoning is live." "Hearth for all," buzzed on Jaden's phone, trending nationwide with 10,000 retweets. Keanu's silver locket, Clara's gift, felt warm in his pocket, her dream alive in the room's shifting tide. Keanu addressed the diners, his voice calm but resonant. "Hearth and Haven was built on Clara Monroe's belief that a meal is for everyone. Tonight, we failed that, but we're starting over." He turned to Lucas, who tensed, expecting dismissal. "Lucas, you keep your job," Keanu said, "but only if you serve every guest with the respect you showed these 5 tonight." Lucas nodded, his voice low. "I understand, sir." He approached the central table, offering Lila a fresh glass of water with steady hands. "Anything else, ma'am?" Lila smiled, her thrift store blazer proud. "Just keep that heart open." Mike clapped Lucas on the shoulder, his 200-pound frame gentle. "You're learning, kid." The diners, including the Prada couple who'd once sneered, clapped again, their $300 wine glasses raised in solidarity. Keanu continued, his gaze sweeping the room. "Starting tomorrow, Hearth and Haven adopts open seating. No reservations, no dress code. Every table from this 10-foot VIP one to the one by the 8-foot kitchen doors is equal." Gasps followed, but Keanu wasn't done. "We're donating $100,000 to Chicago's community dining programs, so everyone can share a meal with dignity." The critic's fingers flew across her phone, tweeting, "Keanu Reeves just made Hearth and Haven a place for all. $100K for community dining. Hearth for all." Jaden retweeted, his gratitude hashtag gaining traction, the restaurant's transformation rippling across the U.S. Rosa whispered to Amir, "Clara's smiling somewhere." The room, once heavy with judgment, now glowed with hope. Chicago's skyline a backdrop to a reborn Hearth and Haven. 6 months later, Hearth and Haven was unrecognizable, yet true to its roots. A 50-foot mural of Clara's locket adorned the building's exterior, its silver gleam visible from Michigan Avenue. The restaurant thrived as a beacon of inclusivity, its 2,000-square-foot dining room packed with a diverse crowd, families in hoodies, couples in suits, students snapping photos of the $10 or Clara's Plate special, a hearty dish of smoked brisket and mac and cheese open to all. Keanu slipped in, incognito, his denim jacket swapped for a plain hoodie, his boots still scuffed. He stood by the glass doors, watching Lucas, now a shift manager, greet a family of 4 in Cubs jerseys with a warm smile. "Right this way," Lucas said, leading them to a table under the chandelier. No hint of the sneer he once wore. Keanu's lips curved, Clara's locket light in his pocket. The menu, now dotted with American classics like $15 crab cakes and $12 bourbon-glazed ribs, told Clara's story, on its cover, a table for everyone, always. Outside, a community board listed free dining events funded by the $100,000 donation, from Englewood potlucks to Loop pop-ups. Keanu stepped into the Chicago night, the city's streetlights casting a warm glow. He didn't need fanfare or recognition, just the sight of Hearth and Haven alive, with Clara's dream. As he vanished into the crowd, the mural's locket gleamed, a quiet promise kept. This story carries lessons we can all carry forward. First, dignity isn't tied to wealth or appearance. It's a right, not a privilege. Keanu's composure, even with lobster staining his jeans, reminds us to stand tall against judgment. Second, one voice can spark change, but many voices make it unstoppable. Mike, Lila, Jaden, Rosa, and Amir's stories turned a dining room into a movement. Third, redemption is possible when hearts shift, as Lucas's journey shows. Mistakes don't define us if we choose growth. Finally, legacy lives in action. Clara's locket wasn't just a keepsake, but a call to rebuild what's broken. These truths, rooted in Chicago's grit and America's hope, challenge us to see every table, every moment, as a chance to include, not exclude. To everyone reading, thank you for joining this journey through Hearth and Haven's transformation. Your support fuels stories like these, where kindness triumphs and dignity shines. If this moved you, drop a yes in the comments and share where you're reading from, Chicago, New York, or beyond. Hit that subscribe button for more tales of heart and hope, because tomorrow, we've got another story waiting to inspire you. Share your own moments of kindness on social media with a Shainrasher dignity. For all, let's rewrite the rules of respect together, one story at a time. Like Keanu, let's walk quietly, but leave a legacy that echoes, from a 2,000-square-foot dining room to the world outside.